The lunch rush hit like a wave, sharp, sudden, and loud. At Gate 12 of the Allegheny Airport Terminal, the Jet Plate Café was barely holding it together. A line of travelers wound past the velvet rope, grumbling and checking their phones. The scent of over-fried onion rings lingering like cheap perfume. Every table was full. Every server was drowning. Behind the counter, a new hire with shaky hands tried balancing 2 iced teas and a coffee. His name tag read Ben, the letters hastily written in marker. Sweat bloomed under his armpits. He moved cautiously, eyes darting for table numbers. Then it happened. He tripped. The tray tilted. Time slowed. 3 drinks launched into the air and came crashing down across. A bald man's laptop and a teenager's hoodie. Gasps. Then silence. Then laughter. A group of off-duty staff near the coffee machine burst out in snorts and cackles. A bleach-blonde hostess named Sky actually clapped. "Welcome to Jet Plate, Benji," she howled. Ben's face flushed red. I'm sorry," he stammered, reaching for napkins. "I'll clean it." But the bald man stood up fast, livid. "Are you kidding me? This laptop cost more than your life. What the hell is wrong with you?" The teenager muttered, "Gross," as she wiped soda from her sleeves. Still laughing, Sky offered a slow clap and turned to another server. "Trevor. That's his 3rd spill this week. Bet he won't make it to Friday." Ben froze. His hands trembled. No manager in sight. No backup. No help. Except for one woman at the far end of the cafe. Her name was Linda, or so her tag said. She wore plain khakis and a crisp, iron jet plate polo, like the others, but her posture was different. Upright, deliberate. Her eyes tracked everything, not just orders. Linda stepped forward and quietly handed Ben a fresh towel. "You're not the first to spill," she said calmly, her voice grounded. "But I bet you're one of the few who apologized." He looked at her, eyes wet with embarrassment. "Thanks." Then she turned, her gaze settling on Sky and Trevor, who were still laughing. Her stare silenced them without a word. What they didn't know, what no one in the cafe knew, was that Linda wasn't Linda at all. Her real name was Mark Ruddick, CEO of Ruddick Group Holdings, the man who'd bought the entire Jet Plate Cafe chain 5 months ago as part of an expansion deal. But after rumors of workplace mistreatment, harassment complaints that mysteriously disappeared, and dipping employee satisfaction, Mark made a choice to go undercover, shave the beard, ditch the suits, gray out the temples. He created a fake HR backstory and entered the system as a transfer from another airport location. No boardroom, no assistant, no name on the door, just the break room microwave that smelled like old popcorn and burnt hope. And now, he had his first data point. By the end of his 2nd week in disguise, Mark had seen enough to know there were 2 jet plates running under the same roof. One was what corporate saw on paper: tight margins, decent sales, average turnover. The other? A small kingdom ruled by a few unchecked staff. Trevor was the unofficial floor manager. Tall, broad, charming on the surface, but sharp underneath. He barked at junior staff when managers weren't around, gave out the easy sections to his favorites, and regularly clocked out early, leaving others to clean up. Sky was his sidekick. She flirted with supervisors, laughed at mistakes, and dismissed any non-white customer with an "I'll be right with you" that never came. She once threw out a receipt with a customer's tip before it could be logged. Mark saw her do it, then watched as she blamed a dishwasher for stealing. But the most disturbing part? Everyone else had gone quiet. Ben kept his head down. Jenna, a single mom on the night shift, didn't speak unless spoken to. Ricardo, the only Spanish-speaking busboy, was constantly mocked for his accent. Mark documented everything. On Thursday, the district manager showed up for a surprise inspection. Suddenly, everyone had tucked shirts and smiles. Trevor made cappuccinos like he was gunning for a Michelin star. Mark stood back and watched the performance unfold. But the real test came an hour later. A passenger in a wheelchair wheeled up to the counter. Alone, elderly, confused. Her flight had been delayed. She was hungry and couldn't find anyone to help. Trevor ignored her. Sky waved vaguely, then whispered to another staffer, "I ain't spoon-feeding nobody today." Mark turned sharply. "She's been waiting 10 minutes. Trevor narrowed his eyes. "You don't run the floor, new guy." Mark leaned closer. "No, but I'll remember this conversation." Sky scoffed. "Ooh, scary. What are you gonna do? Write me up with your crayons?" Mark said nothing. He simply walked over, took the woman's order, delivered her food himself, and offered her his seat. That night, he wrote everything down in a notebook labeled inventory log. But the notes weren't about shipments or stock. They were about people. The next day was Ben's last scheduled shift. He came in late, pale, quiet. Mark approached him at the lockers. "You good?" Ben forced a smile. "Just didn't sleep. They got me mopping vomit last night, and Sky said if I complain, I can find another job." Mark clenched his jaw. "Did you tell management?" Ben shrugged. "She said she'd deny it. Said Trevor would back her up. So, yeah." Mark nodded. That afternoon, a child spilled ketchup across table 4. Trevor groaned loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. "I swear, this place is a daycare with airline tickets." Ben stepped in with a rag, but his hands shook again. Sky snorted. "There he goes, Bambi in the bloodbath." Mark snapped. "That's enough." The cafe turned. Trevor raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me." Mark walked forward, stripping off his name tag and setting it on the counter. His voice was calm, controlled. "My name is Mark Ruddick. I own this franchise, and 27 others just like it." A dead silence settled like fog. Mark looked at Ben. "You're not fired." He turned to Trevor. "But you are." Then to Sky. "So are you." Sky opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Mark gestured to the rest of the stunned crew. "And anyone else who thinks this cafe is your personal playground, you have 2 choices. Be better, or be gone." Ben's mouth hung open. Jenna was blinking back tears. Even the bald laptop man from earlier was standing with his phone out, filming. Mark walked around the counter and faced the room. "I didn't go undercover to punish people. I did it because I wanted to know if we were the company we claim to be. A company that serves travelers with respect and treats workers like humans." He looked at Ricardo. "Starting next week, you'll be trained in front of house if you want it. We're offering ESL support and full-time benefits." He looked at Jenna. "You're getting back pay for the hours you worked off the clock." He looked at Ben. "And you, kid, you get a second chance. Not because you didn't mess up, but because you had the guts to own it. That's leadership." Then he turned toward the entrance. "I'll be back next month. Not as Linda, as me." People started to clap. It wasn't a standing ovation, just a ripple of realization. A few tears. A few apologies. A few second looks. Ben stood tall for the first time in 2 weeks. But as Mark walked to the exit, past the Gate 12 sign, something caught his eye. A man in a blue jet plate jacket, leaning against a pillar, watching, phone in hand, smiling faintly, not clapping, not surprised, just watching. Mark's gut clenched. He didn't recognize him. He didn't have a name tag. He wasn't in the logbooks. And when Mark turned to get a better look, the man was gone. The cafe was quiet now. It always was after the afternoon crowd spilled onto delayed flights and rushed connections. Chairs were half-tucked. Crumbs dotted the floors. The fluorescent lights buzzed like they were tired too. Mark Ruddick sat in the break room. No longer Linda. No more disguise. No more hiding behind borrowed names and name tags. He had revealed himself just 3 days ago in front of the whole staff, and since then, everything had changed. Or at least, it looked like it had. Trevor and Sky were gone, officially terminated for harassment and conduct violations. Jenna got her back pay and was given more stable hours. Ricardo had already started shadowing the front counter with a nervous smile and an "I'll get better" promise attitude. Ben was still here, still nervous, still shaky with trays, but something in him was beginning to settle. Mark could see it in the way he greeted customers. Slower now, more confident. Like, he believed he belonged here. But the one thing that hadn't settled was the man in the blue jet plate jacket. The one who didn't clap, who didn't belong, who disappeared before Mark could ask him a single question. No. Mark replayed it over and over in his head. The man had no badge, no name, but his posture. It was familiar, confident, but silent. Watching, not helping. It wasn't a customer. It wasn't staff. He checked the roster again. No new hires. No transfers. Nothing in the schedules or reports. So he called in someone he trusted. "You're sure he wasn't listed?" asked Deidre Wells, head of HR and Mark's longtime fixer. She sat across from him in a booth after hours, nursing a paper cup of tea. "Checked twice," Mark said. "I've run facial ID through the in-terminal cameras too. TSA didn't clock him as a traveler." Deidre leaned in. "Then we've got a ghost." Mark nodded. "Or a mole." She raised a brow. "You think someone inside corporate sent him?" "I think someone knew I was undercover before I revealed it, and they wanted to see how I handled it." "Why?" Mark looked out over the now empty cafe. "Because they've been watching longer than I have." That night, Mark stayed in the airport hotel across the concourse. He couldn't shake the feeling that his decision to go undercover had triggered something bigger than he expected. A quiet war inside the walls of his own company. He opened his laptop and began reviewing the employee complaint logs from the last 2 years. Not the official ones, the deleted ones. He had to access them through a backup server only he and Deidre knew existed. What he found chilled him. Dozens of complaints from other jet plate locations, ranging from wage theft, verbal abuse, withheld overtime, falsified manager reports, even harassment. Many filed under different district managers, all marked resolved or retracted. Some were signed by Trevor. Others, Mark's own upper-level executives had signed off. He leaned back in his chair, breath catching in his chest. This wasn't isolated. It was systemic. The next morning, Mark requested a private meeting with Barry Klein, the VP of Regional Operations. It didn't go well. Barry chuckled when Mark brought up the deleted complaints. "Look, Mark, you're a great guy, but you've been on the floor too long. You're seeing ghosts." "They're not ghosts," Mark said quietly. "They're employees." Barry leaned back in his seat. "You think you're going to fix the whole system by pretending to be a barista? I think I'm going to start by firing the ones who let this rot spread." Barry narrowed his eyes. "You fire too many managers too fast, and you'll lose your investors." Mark didn't blink. "Then I'll find new ones." That week, Mark started a top-down audit. He didn't announce it. He just walked into another jet plate, this time in Atlanta, and sat in the back, watching the staff. He saw more of the same. Overworked employees, a dismissive manager who never touched a tray, and a 17-year-old server being chewed out in public for something she didn't do. He made notes. He followed the paper trail. He kept digging, until one night, while driving back from a site visit in Raleigh, he got a call. Blocked number. He answered anyway. The voice on the other end was deep, gravelly. "No introduction. You're making enemies. Watch your step." Click. Mark sat in his car, parked under a buzzing Waffle House sign, phone still pressed to his ear. It was a warning, not just about him, about what he was uncovering. He thought about Ben, about Jenna, about how close this place came to breaking them. He thought about the man in the jet plate jacket. The next day, Mark returned to Allegheny Terminal, unannounced. He didn't speak to anyone. He just observed. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Managers hovering. Staff smiling too wide. Even the coffee tasted better. But Ricardo looked nervous. Jenna was quieter than usual. And Ben wouldn't meet his eyes. Mark pulled Jenna aside near the lockers. "What's going on?" She hesitated, then whispered. "Somebody came by yesterday. Said they were from corporate. Oversight. Took our phones. Said it was protocol." "Who?" She shook her head. "No name. No badge. Just a clipboard." Mark's chest tightened. He pulled security footage. The man in the jacket was back. But this time, he had a clipboard. He moved with authority, checked storage rooms, watched conversations, tapped his phone. Still no ID. Still no paper trail. Mark sent the footage to Deidre. 2 hours later, she texted back. No one from oversight was scheduled to visit. That man is not in our system. Who the hell is he? Mark gathered the team that night. All staff. Just the ones who mattered. Ben, Jenna, Ricardo, and 3 others from the kitchen. I want to be clear with you, he said. Someone is trying to scare you into silence. Don't let them. Ben spoke up first. But what if they're from corporate? Mark's voice was steady. Then they'll have to face me. He paused, looked each one in the eye. You've been carrying a weight that's not yours. That ends now. We fix this place together, or we walk away from it with our dignity intact. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Jenna said softly, You're not like the others. Mark smiled faintly. That's the point. By Friday, Mark had filed a formal investigation request with the board of directors. And he did something else. He wrote an open letter to all JetPlate employees nationwide. It read, Leadership doesn't exist to be feared. It exists to serve. If you've ever felt silenced, know that someone is listening now. If you've ever been mistreated, know that change is coming. If anyone threatens your job for telling the truth, forward it to me directly. Because this company isn't built by executives. It's built by you. And I intend to prove it. He signed it. Mark Ruddick, CEO, Ruddick Group Holdings. That weekend, his inbox exploded. Hundreds of emails. Some angry, some desperate, some so full of hope it made him sit in his car with tears in his eyes. A janitor in Detroit wrote about working without breaks for 2 years. A teenage dishwasher in Dallas confessed to hiding in the freezer to cry during her shifts. A cashier in Denver shared how a manager docked her tips for wearing her natural hair. It wasn't just about one cafe anymore. It was the whole culture. And Mark finally saw it. This wasn't a cleanup. It was a reckoning. Back at Allegheny, Mark prepared for the final change. New policies, anonymous reporting tools, free legal counsel for workplace grievances. But as he stepped into the cafe one last time that week, he noticed something new. A small note taped behind the register, written in scratchy, block handwriting. It read, You think you've cleaned house, but some of us built this house, and we don't go down easy. No name, just a symbol, a black circle, scribbled with a slash through the middle. Mark stared at it. This wasn't over. Not yet. He stood there, the bustle of the terminal muffled behind glass, the fryer humming faintly in the background. His fingers touched the paper, then dropped. He didn't rip it down. He didn't call security. He just stood still for a long moment. Then he whispered, to no one in particular, We're still here, and we're not afraid.